Hey everyone, this is Dylan, and today I'll be doing a movie review for you guys. So the movie I'm reviewing today is Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2022. So this movie just came out on Netflix February 18th, 2022, and it is a direct sequel to the original 1974 film. So this franchise is kind of all over the place when it comes to its sequels. And there's like, almost all of them I think are technically just supposed to be direct sequels to the original. Like, I think that maybe like the first three are kind of like one continuity and then the fourth is there. The next generation is just kind of there. I don't know necessarily where it fits in continuity. And then we've got the two remakes, and then we have Leatherface, which, where does Leatherface fit in? That's supposed to be like a prequel. And then we have Texas Chainsaw 3D, which is a direct sequel to the original. And now we have Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2022, which is a direct sequel to the original. So let's get into what this is about. So we have a group of main characters with Melanie, her sister Layla, Dante, and his soon-to-be wife. And Melanie and Dante are these entrepreneurs who have bought the town, I guess they've bought the town of Harlow in order to gentrify the community. They don't use those particular words, but they are bringing in a bunch of investors into this town, and they're basically selling off, auctioning off spots in the town for these people to build their businesses and stuff. So, I mean, that's basically what it is. They're gentrifying this town. Once they get to this town, they happen to realize that there is a Confederate flag hanging from one of the buildings. And so they're like, what is this? We can't have this with the investors coming any minute now. So they go into this building in order to try to take the flag off. And as they're getting ready to leave, somebody comes out and is like, what are you doing in my house? And they are like, nobody should be living here. We bought the entire town. You should have been told you need to leave the premises because the bank has taken your house. And this is where we meet Leatherface. And this is where things all start to go wrong. So that's where I'm going to leave the synopsis. I'm going to keep it pretty short and brief since this movie just came out. This movie was filmed in Bulgaria, which is very interesting, and I was actually kind of surprised at how well they got a dupe for Texas. I thought that this could very well be Texas. I mean, I'm not super familiar with Bulgaria and the landscape of Bulgaria, but I was like, you know, this actually does look like Texas. So I was really happy with that. I wasn't so happy with the town itself. I thought that the town looked very much like a set town. And I think that that was one of the biggest issues because most of the film takes place in this town. And so I thought that it just looks too much like a set rather than an actual lived-in town. I did think once they got into interior sets of the town, I think that that is where it did start looking more lived-in and more like a Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but the outside facade of this town wasn't very good at all. And let's talk about the Halloween 2018 of it all. So, Halloween 2018 really paved roads for this movie. I think that Fede Alvarez, who was the person who came up with the story and who was an EP on this film, took so much inspiration from Halloween 2018, but it didn't work. It wasn't very good. I thought that they brought back Sally Hardesty, the character of Sally Hardesty, because it was originally played by Marilyn Burns, but she unfortunately passed away in 2014, so she could not come back to the role. And they brought the character back in a very similar way to Laurie Strode in Halloween 2018, but it didn't work with Sally Hardesty. We barely got any of her until the third act of this film, and then what happens to the character and what happens in the story didn't work for me at all. And like I said, this is supposed to be a direct sequel to the original 1974 Texas Chainsaw Massacre. The problem is, they don't do enough work here to explain the Leatherface of it all. And let me explain that a little bit. So, Leatherface is now living in this orphanage in the town of Harlow with Miss Mack. She's the person who has worked at this orphanage for years. There's no indication of why Leatherface is there, so they make it seem like Leatherface has been in this orphanage since he was born. Or since he was young. And I think that that is a bit of an issue with saying that this is a direct sequel to the 1974 one where he's living in a house with his family at an already adult age. So that's not very clear in what is going on with that. I also thought that the grittiness of the original movie wasn't in this movie. I think that it's brutal, but unfortunately the grittiness and that like hot and sweaty look to the original film isn't there. And I think that that's a bit unfortunate since they're supposed to be like in the same universe. The kills in this movie are brutal. There are some really great kills, and I think that that's one of the places where this movie succeeds. And if you like brutal kills, it was very much like the brutalness of Halloween Kills, where things go very brutal. And so I think that that is a really interesting thing that this movie does. I mean, Texas Chainsaw Massacre has a way that they can make things brutal. Like, that's like ingrained in this movie, and so they take the brutality of most of the kills up quite a bit. So I did appreciate this movie for that. Unfortunately, all of our main characters are super unlikable. And I was like, yeah, I kind of wish that you would die. So our main group of Melody and her sister and Dante and his fiance, the very first thing that we see them is at a gas station, and they're making fun of one of the local guys that's there. And I think that that kind of put a bad taste in my mouth. And then once they got to the town of Harlow, they try to kick out Miss Mack and Leatherface out of their house that we later find out some things about. And so they're not good people. They're like kicking people out of their house. And I think that that is really heartless, and I think that there's issues there for sure. And it really just makes all of these characters unlikable, and I think that's a bit disappointing. I want to at least root for some of my main characters to survive, not be like, yeah, I kind of wish that you would die, because I don't really like you. There is one thing that I will say that I really enjoyed about this film, and it has to do with Leatherface. See, I didn't necessarily like the look of Leatherface. I thought it looked a bit, I don't know, messy per se. Like the mask that he was wearing, I didn't like that. I thought it looked too, I don't know, blobby almost. I think that that's a little bit of an issue with Leatherface and wearing masks, is I think that it comes off a little blobbish. I think a lot of the really great shots in this movie all revolve around Leatherface. There's some like really great, visually interesting shots in this movie, and they all revolve around Leatherface. There's a lot of times where Leatherface is standing still and he's just silhouetted, and I really thought that those were great. Now I want to talk about some spoilery things. So if you haven't seen this film yet and you'd still like to remain spoiler free, click off for now. If you've already seen the film, then stay around for the spoilers. So we're going to talk about one of my favorite scenes in this movie, which partly worked for me and partly didn't work for me. So we've all seen the trailer where there is a bus full of people. They're holding up their cameras as Leatherface gets on, and they're like, you're gonna get canceled if you do anything. That didn't work for me. What worked for me was what happened after that interaction, where Leatherface basically massacres this bus. I think that this is what puts Massacre in the name Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Like, in the original movie, it was called Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but I think like 5 people die. That's not necessarily a massacre. This is like a massacre. There's at least 10, 15 people that get brutally murdered, and I think that that is really good, and I really liked that scene, because that's the kind of thing that I would want in a horror movie. So I really did appreciate that. And let's talk about politics in this movie. There's a lot of really weird things that this movie may or may not be trying to say. So we have our whole gentrification storyline, and I want to say that they think that this movie's trying to say that this is wrong. Especially since they like kick out this family from their house, but it's not really made super clear, and I don't know. I didn't like that. I thought that it was brought in for maybe no reason at all. This movie could have survived without having that gentrification storyline. It felt like it was just kind of tacked in there, and then everything revolving around the sister of Layla. Oh my goodness, that was not good. So they made her character to be a school shooting survivor. Why? I don't understand what that brought to her character. I don't understand why it needed to be in this movie. They weren't making any grand statements about school shootings. They weren't making any grand statements about gun use. And it seemed like they put it in here so that this character could have an arc and get to this point where she's going to use a gun to gun down Leatherface. But then every time that she tries to use the gun, it doesn't work. And it's just like, that didn't need to be in there. I thought that it was in very poor taste. And compared to the original movie, which had all of these statements to say about the Vietnam War, I just felt like this was tacked in there so it could get people talking, but then what was it actually saying? I think that that was really a bad move in this movie. I did kind of like the ending. Melody and Layla driving away in the Tesla or whatever the vehicle is with the autopilot, but what I was kind of shocked when Leatherface came out, dragged Melody out of the car and cut her head off. I thought that that was kind of crazy. Having Layla hang out of the sunroof and basically scream while the car is driving away on autopilot mode, that didn't work for me. I didn't like that. I thought the credits were really cool, and if you stayed around till the end, there was an end credit scene where we see Leatherface walking up to what is presumably the house from the 1974 film. Why? It just didn't make any sense, and I don't know why they needed to include that. So let's talk about my rating for this movie. I gave this a 2.5 out of 5 stars. I didn't particularly enjoy it. As a Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie, I think that it's a very alright movie. It's watchable, but as a Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie, I was not sold. I was expecting a little bit more, considering that Fede Alvarez has also done the Evil Dead remake, and I thought that that was really nice, and I really enjoyed that one, but this one was just not good. It was definitely a miss for me. So that is it for this review. I hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know in the comments down below what you thought of Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2022 and whether or not you liked it or you didn't like it and why. If you're not already subscribed and you'd like to be, please hit that subscribe button down below and give this video a like if you liked it. Thank you guys for watching and have a great day. Bye.